Oh yeah, dude. I'm afraid all the time, man. If anybody can hear this podcast right now, I'm always scared. But it's about being scared and just conquering your fear and just because once you get past that aspect of fear, like when you land it, like everything goes away and you're just so proud of yourself. And it's like you pat yourself on the back, like you don't need people to do that for you. You can do it yourself.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Promote the Hell Out of It. My name is Ms. Trujillo and this is episode 20 of the podcast, so I have an awesome guest lined up for you all. I chat to pro skater Carlos Lastra, who I actually found out about from watching Braille Skateboarding YouTube videos, and I had Gabe Cruz from Braille Skateboarding on the podcast a few episodes ago. So if you haven't checked that out, please do. It was a wonderful chat and I really loved it. But when Carlos came into Braille Skateboarding, I was absolutely blown away, not only by his style of skating, but also by his ability to conquer fear and to learn new tricks. I thought that was wonderful, and that is something we talk about on the podcast. Carlos also has a bunch of sponsors under his belt, including Free Block Skateboards, Flick Grip Tape, BK, Active Rider Shop, and his custom boards are available on the Shred Quarters, including his latest one, Couch Potato, and his old board, Filthy Animal, which I absolutely love. I think is unavailable, but go check them out because they are awesome. We talk about so much on the episode, things that Carlos hasn't really talked about publicly before, and that add so much to what we already know about him, so I'm excited for everyone to listen to this. We talk about his move from Arizona to Long Beach, about surviving in that city, which is incredibly difficult considering how expensive it is, and about making it as a skater. We talk about how he became pro, we talk about going into Braille, eventually leaving Braille, what he's up to now, and so much more on top of that. Please do let me know what you think. Let me know what I could be doing differently. Let me know who I should talk to next, and enjoy the episode.
Oh yeah, dude. I'm afraid all the time, man. If anybody can hear this podcast right now, I'm always scared.
Carlos, I am so happy to have you on the podcast. I know it's a rainy day where you are. How are you?
Good, man. Just enjoying enjoying the forecast of rain, because when you live in Southern California, or California in general, it doesn't rain as much. So thank you for having me, man.
It's an absolute pleasure, and I've been enjoying all the videos you've been posting on your own channel. I obviously know you from Braille, but all your videos are absolutely wonderful.
Yeah, that's funny, because those were posted maybe years ago, and they didn't get as much exposure back then. So it's kind of crazy to repost them now, and like all the notoriety you got out of it now is just insane.
That's so cool, and it's cool because it's actually helping me discover like new songs and stuff. There's some of the soundtracks are awesome, and I'm like writing down songs.
Yeah, I had nothing to do with any of that. My editors, they've been nothing but great, and it's gonna be cool to tell some of my story of what I've gone through in skateboarding throughout all these years.
For sure, absolutely. So let's start. Let's go right to the start. So you were saying you went out at 15, yeah?
15, about 16 years old, yeah.
Cool. So what was the story there? Where did you head?
Well, I sat down with my dad one day, and he was just telling me, I had the ultimatum to either play music or skateboard, and for some reason, I didn't like being on stage because I played with this band for one set, and it was fun, but it was just so disciplined that I didn't really enjoy it as much as I, enjoy playing music on my own. So I just kind of, I'm going to branch off and just skateboard, because at that time I was already a contest skater, so I was already making, decent money just going through contests and
cool.
Going back and forth to California, since I was 14 years old, and a few scouts had helped me out to figure out what I wanted to do, like as far as being a contest skater. So I had an offer to move out to California at a young age, and I just wanted to do that because being from Phoenix, Arizona, it's kind of a slower paced lifestyle out there. So I wanted to go somewhere where it was just more of a challenge, and it was hard though. Don't get me wrong, I would never let my nieces or nephews do it that young. It was very hard.
It's young, and we'll go into like the difficulties you faced, but going back even further, you say you were contest skating. What made you get into skating in the first place? I remember that for me, I remember watching Back to the Future and seeing a skateboard, and from then I was hooked from such an early
Marty
age.
McFly, dude, that's awesome. For me, I played soccer for about 3 or 4 years, and that was kind of the thing where I lived at the time. And when I moved to a different spot in Phoenix, nobody played soccer. Everybody just skateboarded, and I kind of just would sit down like holding my soccer ball, as like a lonely kid, and I'm like, oh, so this is what people do out here. So I kind of, Mongo pushing, started pushing around, and my brother-in-law had actually given me my first skateboard. And it's a funny story though, because the first day I started skateboarding, and the reason I remember the date, it's because my board got ran over the first day.
No way.
Yeah, it sucked.
How did that happen?
I didn't know about, going over pebbles, and I hit one, and it actually just, my board came to a screeching halt, going through a drive-through, and freaking, this car just ran over it.
Ah, ridiculous. So you've got into skating at this point. What made you actually take it seriously? Was there anything like that made you go, right, this is what I actually am good at or want to do?
I think it had to do with playing soccer, and I remember we were in this finals, and how do you say it? People had, like, you play with the team, and you're playing based off what everybody else does, and when I started skateboarding, I found like it's more individual. Like you only have yourself to blame. So that made me intrigued as a kid, and I just wanted to like, oh, if I mess up, it's my fault. So I kind of caught onto it in that aspect. Like, oh, okay, this is like a definitely individual sport. Like everything that you do is wrong. Like your only biggest penalty is falling down.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I can relate to that for sure. And what about going from there to actually entering contests? Was that your decision, or did someone encourage you to do that?
I don't know actually. I just practiced really a lot because I was horrible for my first 3 years of skateboarding. I was outside, 12, 13 hours a day just working on ollies, going in grass, working on kick flips, and just trying to get the hang of like what the concept is of skateboarding. And I went to a contest because my friends, I was in middle school, and my friends had convinced me to go, like, hey, there's a contest at Mesa, Arizona skate park, and if you want to go do that, like, let's go on Saturday. We're all going to go. We're all going to compete, so I want you to just sign up. And it's kind of crazy. My first contest, I got third place.
No way, that's awesome.
So it was just something that I was just, I guess, naturally good at. And then the very next one I did in Scottsdale, Arizona, Wedge Park, and I got first place.
Oh, dude, that's so good.
So it was just something I was just naturally good at,
How did that feel? Like, how did it feel connecting to something like that and being rewarded with it from those contests?
I guess, hard work pays off. I never really thought of it in the light of like, oh, I need to go out there and win. It was just kind of like go out there and do your best kind of mentality.
For sure. And what about when you got the offer to move out to California? Did it hit you then that you'd like accomplish something? Because you were young, like.
Well, for that, I was went to Pasadena, California. I was 14 years old, and my brother had taken me. My brother's 8 years older than me. He was like my chauffeur at the time.
Yeah.
And then I did a freestyle competition. And I didn't know, like, what a freestyle competition was, because that's kind of, I looked up to Rodney Mullen growing up, and that was one of the things. I was like, okay, well, let's go try it out, And I ended up getting second place in the amateurs, and I got fifth place in the pros.
Oh, nice.
And I was only, 14 years old, and it was kind of crazy, though, in that light to where, how do I say it, just, I didn't know what it was, like, I didn't know that I was, like, the one sticking out at the time. And
yeah, of course.
It was cool because you go to California, people, kids come dime a dozen that as like a, what do you call like, I wouldn't say prodigy, that wouldn't be the right word, but just more of like a person that just sticks out who's just really good at what they do at a young age. And so you go to California and you're sticking out and you're getting good feedback from all the bigwigs. You're just like, oh, okay, so there's something to this. There's something that's, this is my niche in life right now, so I want to just keep pursuing that. So that's what that had a lot to do with, like, how I started to want to just move to California to even try it out.
And when you have that realization, the conversation you mentioned you had with your dad, how does that go? Because telling your parents you want to move out at that kind of age doesn't generally go too well.
Well, it's actually a funny story. He moved out to California when he was 16 to try to make it for music, and he didn't last a month.
Oh, no.
So he told me the whole story. Like, I won't get into it a lot, but and the gist of the story is, like, he came out there for a month, and he depleted all his money, and he had to go back to Arizona, and he knew how hard it was.
Yeah.
But he told me that story to scare me.
Of
And
course.
instead of it scaring me, it made me intrigued. Like, well, if you failed at it, what if I could do it? You know, what if I could just go out there and just show you what life would be if you would have stayed?
Yeah, that's cool. I get that completely, and I find that really relatable. I moved out early because I wanted to prove my parents wrong because I didn't like the fact that they didn't think I could do what I said, which didn't always work out the way I intended, but generally has worked out pretty well if you work hard, right?
Yeah, trust me, it was hell, dude. Like it was a lot of Joe jobs, a lot of failing, and I think that's one of the reasons I'm a little bit successful is because I learned how to fail a lot and just like not put any blame towards anybody but myself, and just learn from my mistakes and prevail after that.
Like when you headed out, what was your big first challenge? What was the first thing that made you go, "Holy hell, this is difficult"?
Getting a job. That was the hardest thing. Getting a job, and when I got a job, I actually worked at Taco Bell, and just balancing, the times that I can get off to go skateboard and go to competitions, and you know, try not to be late at work. And I've always been a workhorse. That's how my dad had raised me, just to work really hard. If you're gonna do something, you got to put 110% into it. Otherwise, what are you doing?
Yeah, it's important, and I was going to mention about that as well because you did mention about the kind of when you start getting this attention from the big shots in California, it's very easy to get an ego, and in all honesty, that's never come across in any of your videos. You've always seemed so humble. Is there anything that has encouraged you to stay that way?
Yeah, it's an unfortunate accident because it did get to my head when I was about 17, 18 years old. And when I was 19, unfortunately, my brother had got hit by a car and unfortunately passed away.
Oh, dude.
And he always looked up to me as a skateboarder and always just would encourage me to keep doing that, to stay out of trouble, because he was a little bit of a troublemaker and he didn't want me to go into that light. So when he passed away, and probably it was the last time I actually been to a funeral. When I had to carry his casket into the ground, it just changed me forever. And always since then, I've just tried to treat people with as much respect as possible, and just give them love, caring, and just as much of my time as possible.
Dude, thank you so much for sharing that, and I'm really sorry, but I've got to say that the way you come across is so wonderful and so encouraging to so many people that it's very obvious that it's made you like an incredible person. So
Yeah, no worries, dude. I just learned in life that things happen for a reason, and and sometimes it's an unfortunate uh, I would say unfortunate occasions. It's not really the best thing to ever talk about. But it doesn't bring him back. And the fact that that's what he wanted me to do, to be a better skateboarder and just to stick with this because he knew it was going to keep me out of trouble. I've
yeah,
stuck with it ever since, and little did I know, like, I feel like he knew like I was going to be something where I'm at now, but I didn't see it back then. He just had all this faith in me, and I still love him to this day. I still think about him every day, and when I do skate, sometimes I always do tricks for him. Just to keep him alive and spirit wise.
of course, and you make him proud, dude. You make him proud. You bring so much happiness to people, dude. I enjoy watching you skate so much. It's
But thank
unreal.
you, man.
Like I wake up feeling like shit at the start of a day, and I will put on a video and feel better for it. So yeah, like you've done him proud for sure. So let's move forward a bit. What was the first point whilst you're out in California where you think you might actually be getting a break with this, and the work is secondary to you skating?
Well, I would say when I started working with NK Vids. He's the whole reason P Rod became pro, and I met him at a Dam Am contest in Costa Mesa, California, and he was just like he watched me skate live, and he's like, "Oh, holy crap! Like I'm looking for like new guest skaters to come onto my channel. Like, how do you feel about like filming?" And honestly, he's the whole reason I turned pro. It's pretty crazy. Like he picked me up at Long Beach competition. No, sorry, not a competition. I should get the story right. He picked me up at a Long Beach skate park because he just showed up, and it was like Dave Paczynski, and he had a couple other pros with him, and he was like, hey, we're about to go hit up this other park. Do you want to just jump in my car? I got an extra slot. I'm like, I mean, yeah, I'm not doing anything, so yeah, for sure. So I started filming with him, and uh, it just kind of worked itself out from that point. Every week he would just come pick me up once a day, and then it became 2 days a week, then 3 days a week. Sometimes we were filming like 5 days a week, and not only that, he was like my mentor. He taught me a lot about the business side of skateboarding and how to handle yourself, how to learn how to talk on camera, and just kind of molded me to be a pro skateboarder. So I have a lot of him to thank for, you know, everything he's done for me. It's been insane.
And it's interesting because I think it's so important to be aware of the people that help mold you. It's so easy to kind of take your own, like what you've accomplished, and forget everything that came before it, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, well, he taught me, the higher the pedestal, the thinner the wire, and which that means it's easier to fall off. So just kind of don't burn any bridges, treat people with respect, and just be good to one another. And people will come back, and it's like a big a loop. People will come back around, and you'll see them, and just try not to hate anybody. That's what I always said.
For sure, yeah, it's good advice. And what about making friendships when you've moved out to California? Because I think we're all aware that skating has lots of very strong personalities. How did you find getting involved in a team, having to meet new people constantly? Did that come naturally to you?
Oh no, I didn't talk for the first 2 years, pretty much. I was kind of filling it out, more of being observant to everything, and it's not like a bad thing per se. I like, keep in mind, I was a 16-year-old, 15-year-old kid, and I'd had to fill out where I was gonna be, the new environment, and it was just kind of hard to fathom, like, okay, like everything is gonna be your fault now, like you have nobody to help you. You have to do this alone, and just get ready. And that's one thing my dad had told me before I left was, once you start paying bills, son, you're never gonna stop. So.
I wish it did stop though, because it gets pretty boring after a while.
Yeah, once you get the routine down, it's not that bad.
Yeah, it's true. Was there any point where you were like, I'm done, I can't do this anymore?
Oh, plenty of times, man. There's plenty of times I was discouraged, and things were just that hard. There's some stories where, like, I think the first 5 years I had worked a lot, had a laptop, just car full of like all my clothes, my guitar, and I actually got stolen, dude. I had to start all over.
Yeah, dude.
And that was the ultimatum. It's like, what are you going to do? And I had a competition the next day, so I was sitting there making a police report and just kind of contemplating, should I go back to Arizona? And I just didn't really believe in backtracking, so I just went to the competition, and I ended up winning. So I won like $300, and I won like 2 pairs of clothes to start. So I was like, all right, I guess I guess this is a fresh start for me, so let's just keep this going and see how far I can take it.
That's so cool. And I like asking that question because it's so easy to look up to people and think that they've had it easy. And it's not the case.
Anybody who's successful is because they failed so many times, and that's what people, even when you watch actors in movies, it's the same thing. Like, they have to go through hell just to get that movie done, and
so true.
It's the same, aspect of, the conversation. Like, oh yeah, it's hard. It's not easy to be successful. You have to be willing to fail, and that's one of the first things that you have to be willing to do is just accept failure and bounce yourself back and try harder the next time.
Yeah, for sure. So most of the journey we're talking about so far, you're predominantly street skating. Is that right?
Yeah, well, I don't believe in like style of skateboarding. I believe in skateboarding. But yeah, technically, yeah, I put out a lot of street parts. I think I'm working on one right now, so I have 2 years, and this will be my 8th or 9th street part going on so far.
Nice. So was it quite, when you then started with Braille, was that quite a difference having to change things up?
Yeah, I mean, they gave me a training facility platform to actually progress myself, but that's another thing that, like I said, I have NKA to thank for all of that, because he's the whole reason I got into touch with Andy Sharrock and Brian Ames, and I was on Flow for Revive for a couple years, and they talked to me about this new company that was developing, and 3 Block hadn't been established yet. Like not even a name yet. So I was supposed to be AM for them when I initially had the meeting, and they tricked me into this. This is a funny story. They literally they're like, hey, we need to talk to you. I need to have a FaceTime meeting with you on Wednesday, which is funny that we're doing this on a Wednesday, but they were talking to me, and I'm like, oh man, I'm in trouble. I don't even know what I did, like I'm about to get kicked off, and I'm all worried about it because I at the time I wasn't skating enough. I was a fish grill cook, and I was just paying bills and stuff and trying to pay back all my debt. And he just, I'm like all freaking out. Like I'm literally just like, oh no, I'm about to get kicked off the team, and I'm all like heart thumping, pacing, everything, walking back and forth. And they're like, let me ask you a question, Carlos. I'm like, what? Do you want to be pro? I'm like, what? Do you want to be a pro skateboarder? Answer the question. I'm like, well, yeah, for sure. And then he like flips his phone around and he shows me my filthy animal graphic, and he's like, this is about to go into production, and I know you said we were gonna put you AM for the company, but I want you to be a pro skater for our company. So if you're okay with it, is this graphic okay? And I was just freaking out, like oh man, like no way. And I turned pro June 20th, 2017.
Nice.
And from there, just that's kind of what the motivation was to move to Braille, actually. Because Aaron had reached out to me about like a month later and asked me if I wanted to move to Bay Area, but at the time I was paying back debt. I was paying back everybody who ever helped me because I was getting paid for skateboarding now. So once I got all the debt paid off, I realized like, hey, you're a pro skater and you need to be able to promote your board, and you couldn't do that, being a fish grill cook. So you kind of just realized, hey, let me call Aaron and let me see if that's still available. So I had reached out to him one more time, and I was like, hey, how you wanted me to move to Bay Area? Can you, like, is that still available? Can I still come out there? And he was just open arms, like, yeah, come out here. And
that's so cool.
Because I realized that that's the best way to like sell your boards. They have a good platform, and then it's a training facility, so you can actually get there and just practice every day and work on your craft and get, not perfect it, because there's no such thing as perfection, but get somewhere close to that. And yeah, being at Braille definitely helped me be a better skateboarder, and it's been awesome, dude.
It's rad to hear, dude. What was the biggest challenge going into Braille?
Going into Braille was just knowing that it was just like being 16 years old all over again, but you're older at that point, so it's not really that big a deal.
That's cool. And I want to touch on persistence, because I've seen you on the Braille videos attempt things over and over again, and I've got to say, I talked to Gabe about this. I found it so physically painful watching you jump off those rafters at the end of...
that one. Yeah, that was hands down the scariest video for sure. Like that was probably the most like fear I had going into something, because the factor of like how much you can get hurt, and like if you fall backwards 17 feet, like there's no way your legs are going to take that impact. Sure. It'll snap, like I had a lot of that in my mind, and sometimes the best way to skate is when you just don't think about it at all.
Yeah, I get you, and I love hearing you say that. But I do love as well that there's some skaters that pretend not to be afraid ever, if that makes any sense.
Oh yeah, dude, I'm afraid all the time, man. If anybody can hear this podcast right now, I'm always scared. But it's about being scared and just conquering your fear, and just because once you get past that aspect of fear, like, and you land it, like, everything goes away, and you're just so proud of yourself, and it's like you pat yourself on the back, like you don't need people to do that for you. You can do it yourself.
And what about that period of transition between leaving Braille? How does it feel to be now in a different period again?
Oh, live your life in chapters. This is just where I always followed my instincts growing up. Like I've always followed my heart since I was a little kid, and that's kind of where it made me to where I'm at now to this day. And no regrets. I mean, I never left Braille on bad terms. I still talk to Aaron to this day. We're still teammates on the shred quarters, and still talk to Gabe and just check in on them every now and then. And those guys they gave me a whole platform to literally find out who I really was as a person, and You know, I think I just burnt my own self out. Like, I don't want anybody to ever blame Braille for me leaving. It was literally me to my own self because I was, you know, teaching a lot of lessons. I was running skate camps and I was being a talent for both channels. And my body had just got tired, you know, and mentally and physically. So it's no hard feelings towards them. And I don't want anybody to ever look at them and say, hey, it's your fault he left. No, it's literally me to myself. And I've always been that way.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, dude, people will always read into stuff. People love reading into stuff, especially if it's on the internet. The point is the message you're sending across is really important. You do need to analyze where you're at. You need to look at your mental capacity, your physical capacity, and make the right decision, not worry about what other people are going to think about it.
Oh, no, yeah, exactly. I never worried about what people ever thought of me, you know. Like, you can hate on me all you want. If anything, I love the haters because, you know, it's like saying, try to do what I've done. And you'll, if you work really hard, you'll get there. But, like, don't waste your time hating because that takes effort just as much as it does to get things done.
Well, that's the thing, right? It's tiring. Like, negativity is draining, and if you spend time worrying too much about it, you don't have time to do anything positive.
Yeah, and you know, a lot of it has to do with like jealousy and stuff, and I don't like to deal with any of that stuff at all. It's not me, you know. Like, you know, I'm the person who's never really told my story, and like I said, you know, when I lost my little brother, it made me more humble than I've ever been in my life, and I just chose to stay that way to this day.
Yeah. That's awesome, dude, and it's really amazing to hear. What about your influences when it comes to skateboarding? You mentioned Rodney Mullen, who I absolutely adore and was one of the skaters that really made me feel like I could do some stuff because I wasn't into the whole ollie thing. I could never master that as a kid. It took me quite a while to do that.
Oh, yeah. Ollie, kickflip, those are the two hardest tricks you'll ever learn in skating. You know, once you get past that threshold, you'll prevail. You know, beyond that point. But realistically, you know, my first favorite skateboarder was Jeff Rowley as a kid.
Oh, nice.
And I played Tony Hawk Pro Skater 3, and then I unlocked Rodney Mullen's, you know, video on PlayStation 2, and I watched that, and I was just like, oh, I want to do that. That's the style I want to adapt to, and then from there, you know, I started watching like all the other, I guess like anybody who's in Tony Hawk Pro Skater, plus 411 videos. My first two videos was 411, 26, and 27, and Danny Gonzalez did a kickflip 1 foot manual on the Pier 7 mani pads, and I was just like, that's real? And I was like, okay, like, like, I guess, like, as a young age, you kind of look at it to where, oh, man, all you need to do to skateboard is have a big imagination, because anything's possible.
Yeah.
This is, like, the most extreme sport to where nothing's impossible, you know?
And how do you find that? Your imagination seems ridiculous. Like, some of the stuff you came up with at Braille is insane. And your skate scenes, like the combos you do, and I will call them combos because I love that we talked about Tony Hawk. Some of the stuff you do literally looks like a combo.
I guess you could say I'm Tony Hawk Pro Skater influenced. But realistically, it's just, I've always been an observant skateboarder as a kid. I've always just watched people, and like, I've never been intimidated by anybody who was better than me. I was always intrigued by it, and I would sit there and watch them, look at their foot movement and like how they use their arms, and just observe, you know. And I always felt like just being around that energy would help you yourself, you know, as opposed to just sitting by yourself and trying to figure it out.
Yeah, I get that. Absolutely. And it's weird because we all learn from different things, and some people just want to ask a load of questions, but some people just want to literally be in the space and observe, and that's enough.
Exactly, you know. It's I've always looked at it to where, like, especially being at Braille, you know, because some things got repetitive, and I was like, I just want to come out here, and the idea of Braille is to progress every day, you know, so I never wanted to get stuck doing the same tricks, you know. The warm-ups were always the same tricks, but realistically it was like, I want to show these guys, even though I'm a good skater, I could push myself even farther, and I want you guys to do the same. And I want to say I set like a higher standard for them, and honestly, I've seen a lot of them progress since then, you know. And
I think that it's obvious that you continuously want to progress, and it's obvious from the conversation, but I think people already knew that from watching you skate, because I watch when there's other people in any of your videos and they're doing tricks, you're in the background trying the trick before anyone, like before it's even landed.
Yeah, I try to stay off the grid when it comes to that. You know, I'm working on it, but I don't want to like ever step on anybody's toes when it comes to like their persistences.
No, but it's nice to watch because I think that we can relate to that as skaters. We can relate to people doing tricks and us being like, right, I need to figure this out. That's really real and relatable.
Well, you know, have you heard of Salmon Aga? Like people say, like, why are you doing that trick? Like I already did that, and you go like, I get that, but it hasn't been done in this body, so I'm gonna do it too. Like there's, you know, how people claim tricks like that doesn't exist, man. Like I want people like, I hate when people are like, hey, can I try that nose grind with you? I'm like, yeah, go ahead, you can do whatever you want, dude.
For
It's
sure.
fine.
But it's like you were mentioned music before, and I played in a band for ages, and I'm really into like hip hop as well. And there was that whole argument about sampling for ages, like you can't use samples, and it's like, but you're creating something completely new, like the re-envisioning of something in a different body, in a different way of being done, is always going to appeal to people differently, not to the same people necessarily. Like the way you move isn't the same as someone else doing that trick. It never will be.
That's the beauty about skateboarding. It's all individual. Most people don't understand that aspect of skateboarding. You know, like they think just because they think they invented a trick that nobody else gets to have the right to do that trick, and that's not the case. Like you should be able to share everything. You know, that's kind of how I was taught.
No, for sure, and I think it's encouraging to hear that said, because something that I always like mentioning when I hear skaters talk like this is that we're so pushed by what we see on TV and the aggression and ego and persona that is generally put across is almost like media driven as opposed to reality driven.
Oh yeah, production at its finest, man.
How do you feel about that? Is that something that appeals to you?
Well, you know, working for Braille, that was a lot of that going on. You know, a lot of just a lot of production, a lot of sponsored videos, and some things were scripted. But overall, you know, we were like I would always like admit it to, it would be like the PG Jackass crew, which is awesome, you know, because our demographic was definitely, you know, catering to younger kids, and you know, you got to watch your mouth, you got to like not drink, not smoke, not do any of that stuff, which I don't do, so it's perfectly fine, you know. It was just something because I was already a certified teacher for 9 years. The one thing that's the one thing that was cool about Braille was they didn't know that I taught skateboarding. Like I was teaching before I even did the whole lessons at Braille. You know, most people thought I started there. I was like, no, I was teaching. I've been teaching at this point for 9 years.
Ah, dude, that's awesome.
Southern California. It's called, a company called Skate Dogs. If you guys can check them out, they're awesome. And this guy Adam. And the funniest thing about it was, I'll tell you a funny story. Is how I got into teaching, because I just did a demo. I covered somebody who was sick from one of my roommates. He's like, hey, we need a skater to come skate this demo. Can you come do it? And I was like, yeah, no worries. You know, did the demo, did very well, and the owner came up to me afterwards. He's like, hey, like hey, you did really good. Like I know you're sponsored, but how do you feel about teaching skateboarding? Have you ever taught? And I'm like, you know, lessons, pointers every now and then at a skate park, nothing too crazy. He's like, that's awesome. So yeah, here, he gave me a card and just come here this day, this time, and we'll get you started. So I show up, right? I'm thinking like, hell yeah, they're gonna teach me how to teach skateboarding. This guy literally gives me 12 kids. He just walks away. I was like, wait, what, Adam, what? He's like, oh, you said you could teach, right? I'm like, oh, kinda, you know, like. So he literally, I fell into teaching.
That's so
And,
awesome.
so the first couple years, you know, I was kind of using, I kind of feel bad for saying this, but I was using kids as like guinea pigs and just seeing like what would happen, and it was like, oh no, like he fell. Nobody ever broke their bones with me. This I'll stamp that in the bud right now. Like nobody ever broke their bones. It's
Yeah, that's good.
You know, you would watch them like, what would happen if you leaned back? So you start learning like the detail of skateboarding just by watching kids, and eventually you kind of learn how to teach yourself. You know, you'd be like in the middle of a lesson and you'd just be, oh yeah, so all you got to do is lean. You know, you would stop mid, and then your head would kind of like click, like, oh, that's what I was doing wrong. So like after the skate camps, I would just go to the skate park and figure out my own mistakes. So that's kind of how I got into like just being more detail oriented when it comes to learning how to skate.
That's so cool. That's really interesting. And what was the first trick that stumped you? Can you remember one that where you were like took you ages to get over?
360 flips,
Yeah, I'm not surprised to be honest.
which is now my easiest trick. But yeah, that was the one. Kickflip too, because kickflip I would do kickflip sex chains, or now these days called kickflip body varial. Yeah, that one I couldn't keep my shoulders square. So when it came down to learning it, it was like, oh no, I can't figure it out. And then one day, I remember the day. It took me 8 months to learn, and it was at Wedge Skate Park on the flat ground area. I must have been 11 years old, and I just did my first kickflip, and that's kind of like where I knew. I remember you asked me a question like, "Is skateboarding for you?" That's the day that I knew like this is what I want to do forever. Because it was so satisfying, you got so much out of it that my first 360 flip down the 10 stair too. That was a big milestone for myself.
Yeah, it's funny because you mentioned you played that one gig with a band and you're like that I'll do skating. I had the opposite moment kind of thing where I did my first gig and was like I never want to stop doing this ever. I want to stay on a stage forever. And it is that you need to have that spark, don't you? You need to have that moment of going, I love this. This is awesome, and I think I'm good at it.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know how good I was until I came to California. Like, I didn't know I stuck out that much. And keep in mind, man, like especially to this day, that's where you go to make it. Like, California is the mecca of skateboarding, and
Yeah.
I mean, I might be a good skateboarder, but at the same time, I know about 100 skateboarders who are way better than me, way beyond me, and I don't feel discouraged that, like if anything, it encouraged me to try harder and work on my craft more.
Yeah, I get that, but do you think that's because of your personality? Do you think that other people would feel the same if they went to California?
I've seen people have nervous breakdowns. Come out with $20,000, deplete it, have a nervous breakdown, and just not make it, and they would have to go back to where they were, and it's unfortunate. California is a hard place to live. Actually, it's very expensive. It's high rate of paying rent, and just it's so how do I put the word, it's so flooded with talent to where you can't be discouraged because somebody's better than you at something. You just kind of have to treat it like it's your own profile, and that's kind of how you have to look at it.
That's cool. And what about if you were giving someone advice, not on necessarily moving to California, because I think we've touched on how difficult that is, but on trying to stand out as a skater with their skating style? What would you say?
It's the Dave Chappelle quote: "Prepare to get your heart broken." But just bounce back and just keep, understand that you have to understand in California it's basically 1,000 no's for one good yes, and it's up to you if you want to chase those no's for that yes. It's not the easiest place to live, but if you can get past that threshold, it's definitely worth it, and I know from personal experience. So you guys just don't give up, and just have a good head on your shoulder, and just understand how hard it is. So out there, it's a rat race.
Yeah, it's true. People aren't that kind to each other when they're trying to make it. Generally.
Honestly, you'd be surprised. Actually, everybody's more of there's more camaraderie than most people think.
Ah, dude, that's nice to hear. That's pretty encouraging. So what about other places in the world that stand out to you as skate scenes right now? Is there anywhere where you're like, I really want to head here at some point?
Well, I would love to go to Australia, but I just wouldn't want to get bit by one of their poisonous bugs. Japan, I've always wanted to explore. Still have yet to get my passport, so there's just a lot. I mean, just leaving California in general. Just going from a fast-paced lifestyle to where I'm at now. It's kind of weird to go from somewhere where you could just take a nap and everybody complains about you, like, you need to be doing something every day, and then you go to a place like Utah and like, oh, I slept till like 7, and they're like, yeah, that's cool.
It's funny because we lived in the UK for a long time and then moved back to Barcelona, and it's that kind of difference. Even though they're both cities, Spain is so chilled and everything's so slow, and you take a 4-hour break in the middle of the day to eat and stuff. And then we came back to England and we're like, holy hell, everyone wants to move fast. Like, no one wants to let you stop.
Yeah, that's kind of what defines California from like a lot of states. You know, California, New York. I've been in Florida. It's pretty fast paced. You know, especially in Miami. Um, it's just it's weird because I'm from a state that's slow paced. Yeah, like I'm from Phoenix, Arizona, and it would be like you could just sleep in all day and nobody would say anything to you. And I learned to live California lifestyle because I've been out there for about 15 years, and that was the funniest thing because I remember going to visit one time all my old friends, and I was like, "Let's go do something, guys," and they're just sitting down watching a skate video, and they're like, "No, we don't want to do anything. Come on, guys, we got to get out and do something." I'm like, no, no, no. And my friend had like reminded me because he was from California. He's from Oxnard. He's like, "Hey, you're just used to that whole California vibe. Like, we're not like that out here." And I was like, "Oh no, you're right." So we could just sit here and do nothing. He's like, "Yeah, that's what we've been doing since you've been gone. We've just been sitting here watching skate videos, and we go skate once it cools down, and that's just how it is out here." I'm like, "Okay, cool. That's awesome."
Nice. Nice. It does. It's weird how it takes getting used to. Like, doing less actually takes getting used to.
Oh, you're telling me, man. I'm still adjusting to this day. I've been out here for a little over a month, so.
Yeah. Do you find you get bored because you had so much on before, or are you quite happy just chilling at the moment?
Honestly, I'm kind of happy just chilling at the moment because this
Yeah.
last summer I was working about 210 hours a month, so like
Whoa.
52 hours a week. And yeah, like I said, I personally burnt myself out working at Braille and just doing everything. And there was one day where I came to work and my body just bugged out and I was just shaking, like my hands were shaking and I couldn't like control my physical like stature. And it was just like, okay, I need to go. Like, I need to go home, guys. Like, I'm sorry. Like, I know I'm needed for this shoot. I was obligated to be there, but realistically, I was just that tired, and I couldn't put myself through any more stress. So I was like, all right, I'm just gonna go. And I literally slept for like 3 days.
Yeah, dude,
But
you need to make that call. You need to make that call. That's important.
yeah, when it got to a point where I knew it was like physically exerting, I just didn't want to, you know, overexert more of that, and I just kind of just needed to rest. And I took 3 days off, and I didn't even mind. But apparently, at the time, I had 6 days, so they paid me for those days I was off, which was awesome. I wasn't expecting anything. I was just like, yeah, I really need a rest. Like, I'm really useless right now.
Yeah. No, but dude, I think that it's so important to be able to judge that, and it's so easy to push too hard and actually hurt yourself. And that's not that's there's no point in that, because surely the end goal is longer than that.
Well, the end goal is always to stay as healthy as possible, because I still want to
Exactly.
skate as much as possible. But when it came to that point, I just was overexerted, and like I said, it wasn't Braille that did that to me. I was the one who was like the yes man. I always had anything they asked for. I was always there to do it. Hey, Gabe, do you need this shoot? Yes, I'll do it. What do you? My boss Devin, like, do you need me to do these lessons? Like, yeah, I'll do it, no problem. Like, I never said no.
Yeah. Well, I was gonna ask, in hindsight, is there anything you'd have done differently? But I think you're kind of answering that yourself.
No, no. There's really no hindsight. Like, I did what I did, and I gave them my all as much as possible, but it got to a point where, I just felt like it was time for a new chapter in my life. And it had nothing to do with like leaving Braille. And I know it seemed like I was brief out there because it was only been 2 years. But keep in mind, like, I lived in California at that point for like 15 years, and I was just burnt out from California in general. So I think it was just a compilation of everything that I've done out there. And I just needed a change of scenery.
And what have you got planned next? Anything, or are you just seeing what happens?
Just been training at skate parks out here, relearning how to skate different terrain. Because if you guys ever go to Braille, it's so perfect out there. Like, the ramps are just too nice, and it was too easy to skate in a sense. And that's like I don't want to ever sound cocky saying that, but it's nice to go to skate parks to where the ground's kind of lopsided and you have to figure out that terrain, and just relearning how to skate street. And I'm going to be working on a video part for the next 2 years, starting in about 3 months. So I'm basically in training mode right now, just learning different terrains and learning how to skate over cracks again and all that stuff.
Dude, that's absolutely wonderful. I've had such a wonderful time chatting to you, and I think it's really important for people to know your backstory because it really adds so much more to what we already love about you, dude.
Ah, man, appreciate it, man. Like, just thanks for talking to me. Like I said, this is my first podcast, so I hope I didn't do too bad, guys.
You've done awesome. You've done awesome. Is there anything that you would leave people with that you're like, this is the point that I want people to remember?
Look, just know that life is very hard sometimes, and just find your niche, find things that you love, and stick with it because it can keep you out of trouble and it can keep you on a good mindset. And overall, man, it's just for me, skateboarding had saved my life. I've had to lose a lot of things family wise, unfortunately, and it's life is hard. It's always going to be, but it's what you make of it that makes you happy. So just keep a good mindset on your head and literally just make the best of it. And thank you guys, everybody who supports me. I did not think I would ever be where I'm at now in this life if it wasn't for everybody who supported me. So I really appreciate you guys. I love you guys, and I pray for everybody that is struggling, and I even pray for the ones that are doing good. You guys just got to do the best you can, and trust me, it'll work out. As long as you keep a good head on your shoulder, everything will work out, guys.
Yeah, man, you can't believe how encouraging it is to listen to you. It's absolutely wonderful. Thanks so much, Carlos.
All right, man. Well, thank you for having me, brother. Oh yeah, dude. I'm afraid all the time, man. If anybody can hear this podcast right now, I'm always scared.
Thank you so much for checking out that episode. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you'll leave me some feedback. Give it a like, give it a share, leave us a review if you're listening from Apple Podcasts. It all really helps, and definitely check back because we've got some more awesome guests lined up. Catch you soon, and thanks again.
Oh yeah, dude. I'm afraid all the time, man. If anybody can hear this podcast right now, I'm always scared. But it's about being scared and just conquering your fear, and just because once you get past that aspect of fear, like when you land it, like everything goes away, and you're just so proud of yourself. And it's like you pat yourself on the back, like you don't need people to do that for you. You can do it yourself.